Welcome, everyone, to the Pick Six Podcast, where we discuss the biggest stories in college football. I'm your host, Chris Cheng, and as a reminder, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, it really helps us get our videos up and out there into the interwebs. Also, send us your story ideas to thepick6guys@gmail.com. We want to know, what do you guys want to see and hear us talk about? Guys, today I am fired up. We're going to have a lot of energy. I was able to reel in some awesome dudes. The first one you're kind of familiar with. We've got to welcome, first and foremost, our boy, Rudy Tamarchio. Rudy, how are you today, my man?
I like your fishing language there by saying you reeled somebody in.
I
I'm
always
doing
have to, my
well.
man.
We're hitting the road again next week. I'll be in Cabo San Lucas, Zangray Championship playoffs, the final stop of Sport Fishing Championship. So as long as I don't get detained and as long as this hurricane that's apparently hitting off the coast of Cabo right now doesn't wipe it off the face of the map, I'll be out for the next week.
Listen, man, we love getting you in here. It's my favorite thing to do. But I believe you've also reeled someone in, maybe a first mate. We'll use it maybe as.
Oh man, I hope we never refer to him as a first mate ever again. I know his wife probably wouldn't like that too much, but yeah, we got a real fun guest on today. Good friend of mine from back in the day, the University of Miami. You may know him as the host of Locked On Canes, Mr. Locked On Canes himself. He also happens to be the host of the post-game show at 560 WQAM. We like to call him Launchpad McQuack from back in the day, Mr. Alex Donno. The
We
only
gotta.
man to start the couple of campus records to start, the first man to ever start his own Facebook fan club back in 2004, the first man to have his own anti-Facebook fan club started by his friends in 2004. We got him back. Welcome to the show.
But talk about memory lane. Thank you both for having me. And hey, I'm glad you're having me on this season when everything's off to an awesome start. Ranked second in the country. Carson Beck is playing lights out. Malachi Toney is an absolute revelation. Miami's already gotten 2 victories against in-state rivals this year. Already dispatched to Florida State and Florida. So there is no better time to be on this show. And thank you both for having me.
Yeah, we are so honored to have you on here, Alex. Fun fact for the viewers out there, Alex, Rudy, and myself all went to UM together. We have a kind of a Canes connection, a Canes University of Miami School of Communication reunion going on right now. So it feels good. It feels fun. But for those who may not know Alex, I wanted to jump this and start this show off right off the rip and kind of talk about maybe your fandom. And you've dedicated a career to covering sports here in South Florida. Now, did you always want to do sports, or was there maybe like a deeper desire to cover specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, first of all, I grew up a fan. I grew up a Hurricane sports fan. You know, my father, I think he started before I was born as a professor at the university. So I was raised in it, and I was born in '84. So I got to watch a lot of championships. I got to watch a lot of great teams. This was all before I even attended Miami. So I was always a sports fan, especially Miami Hurricane sports. And I didn't decide that I wanted to like be in the industry like sports media until I was in my second year at Miami. I'm actually I was a business major. I did a
Oh,
couple of minors. I did a couple of minors that involved communications because I kind of got into that a little bit later on. And so I was such a going back to really to high school, I was such a junkie for sports radio. And I
mhm.
was a real junkie, you know, growing up on ESPN and everything. And so I just kind of thought, man, I put a lot of time into watching games and talking about this with my friends. Let me kind of dabble into it. And so that was sort of how my passion got me into the industry. So I was like 19 when I kind of decided that this was something I wanted to pursue.
Yeah, and you're doing a great job. Like I was telling you offline, you're kind of the catalyst for me and Rudy. Well, me specifically, starting the show. Been watching you for several years now until you got our boy Rudy on the show, and I was like, you know what? That's someone I would love to co-host with, Rudy. And we had a great run last year, Rudy. And every time we get you on, we love having you. So let's jump into it, boys. All right. Uh, when we all graduated, right? We all graduated roughly around the same time, 2003, 2004 in high school, right? And we were seniors and juniors coming into Miami when Miami was putting probably the greatest college football team on the field about 23 years ago, not to date us too much, you know. Um, Talk to us about the journey this program has been on the last 2 decades, but what has it also been like as a fan to cover this team to see where we're at today? Either of
There's
you
been a
can
lot
take
of
it.
frustration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. There's been a lot of frustration, as I'm sure you guys would both agree with, over the last 20 plus years. I mean, I think it became very clear, and it started around 05, 06,
Hmm.
and then it went into 21, 22, right before Mario Cristobal was hired. It's like the program just it started to fall a little bit too much into the past. It wasn't evolving with the times. You know, when you look at some of the SEC powerhouses specifically, just investing so much money and so many
Yeah.
resources into athletics, because that used to be something like in the previous era of, you know, Hurricanes football success. Didn't matter if you didn't have the best facilities, and it didn't matter if you had a private jet for your coaches to go recruiting, because it still, you know, so much talent in South Florida. A lot of those players were going to find their way to Miami, and then it just started
Yeah.
to change when, you know, the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Ohio States and the, you know, some LSUs of the world started to really build their infrastructure up, and Miami just didn't really for a long time make it a priority. And so I think what happened was, and this was, you know, we started to see the transition kind of during the Larry Coker era. Like when Coker took over, you know, he inherited the most talented college football team of all time, still to this day. It's fair to
Yeah.
say that about the '01, even the '02 Canes. And, you know, started to see kind of over the next 3, 4 years before Coker was fired in 2006 that it wasn't churning the same way. And then after Coker, you know, it didn't really matter who Miami hired to replace him. They weren't going after the top candidates because they didn't want to spend on the top candidates. And so,
Yeah.
you know, whether it be the Randy Shannons and the Al Goldens of the worlds and, you know, Mark Richt, I think Miami just kind of got him when he was already exiting his coaching prime. And then the Manny Diaz thing was a disaster here. You know, I think we needed the revelation that came, you know, probably started in 2021 and then into early 2022. Well, I guess it was still 2021 when Mario Cristobal was hired at the end of that year, when they realized, and credit to folks in the administration like Joe Echeverria, who's now the university president, and Rudy Fernandez, one of the top advisors at the time, like for understanding that, hey, we have an opportunity to turn this thing around, but we're
Yeah.
going to have to start spending money and resources like a big boy program. And, you know, we've been doing that for the last 3.5 years, and you're starting to see the results on the field.
Yeah. Go ahead, Reed.
I think of it almost like you look at a slot machine and you want to hit triple sevens and you want to have all three pieces kind of align at once. And when you watch, like Donno, I think put it really eloquently, uh, there's always been this mistiming. I think when things started going wrong, like just to try to briefly like touch on each of those. Yeah, Larry Coker inherited, a lights out team, a team that had obviously one of the greatest rosters ever assembled in college sports. I would argue the greatest team of all time. And certain things change over the time where he was obviously a fantastic X's and O's coach. He was the offensive coordinator for that team prior, but there was definitely some extra reliance on recruiting services and things where like you could see that the blueprint that Butch Davis put together with Pete Garcia in terms of finding these diamonds in the rough to get around the sanctions from the mid to late 90s was a big part of that success. And it felt like at different points in our time since we graduated, it's been one of those jobs where there's not a whole lot to fix, but then there's a whole lot more to fix. Like I
Yeah.
think if we go back and look at like what happened with the Coker years, okay, Randy Shannon might not have had the amount of leash that maybe he needed or a little bit more time to try to put things in his way with what he was dealt with, because it was this alignment of, when I talk about the slot machine, it's the administration being in line with the athletic department, being in line with what the coaching identity of this team looks like. And I think at times we've had maybe the right coach of the right system, but we haven't had the alignment from the administration, or we haven't had the guidance from the athletic department. And without rehashing all of those years of pain, it feels like right now we have all three of those things aligned. And I think if you look
Yeah.
at it, it's really funny about how some of those pieces have really been there all along. It's never been like the secret sauce. It's, if you
Yeah.
look at what Mario Cristobal is doing purely from a football perspective, these look like those teams when he was here as a graduate assistant, when he was here as an assistant coach. Remember, he was on those teams when we were in school as tight ends coach, as a backup offensive line coach. Like he worked with Art Kehoe, he worked with Larry Coker, he worked with all these different guys. These offenses feel a lot like what they're doing identity wise when it comes to unbalanced eyes and huge unbalanced lines and huge offensive and defensive lines. Just size, speed, tenacity, things that you knew were Miami DNA for a long time, he's doing. When you look at the talent that he's bringing in, not just through the transfer portal, which didn't exist back then, and NIL and all that stuff, but the guys he's growing from home, guys like CeCe Maui Noah, guys like Malachi Tony, who I think we all
Yeah.
know it's criminal that he was a 3-star recruit that was playing multiple positions.
Yep.
That sounds like the guys that Butch Davis and Pete Garcia used to go and get. Donno talked about Joe Echeverria. We can't speak enough about him. Yes, he didn't hire Mario Cristobal, but he's been an integral part of this even before he became the University of Miami's president. He was the CEO of UHealth before that. So he was on
Right.
a totally separate arm of things that's coming in as the ally that athletics needs. There was that switch at athletic director that when you look at what happened with Mark Richt and the Manny Diaz situation, a lot of people are going to put on Blake James. Yeah, he wasn't playing with the same deck, the same bank account that, Dan Radakovich has had to play with. But all of these things are there in terms of having the experience and the know-how and the resources behind you. And as of right now, it feels like it's all together.
Yeah, and it's clicking. Did you want to say
Yeah.
something, Donna?
No, I couldn't have said that any better myself. I agree.
Yeah, and so we were talking about Mario and talking about him getting his guys in the building, Rudy. You were kind of alluding to that and recruiting specifically his type of player. We've heard that like in almost every press conference each year when the recruiting cycle comes up. What do you think was kind of like the missing component or set of factors that kept that type of player maybe coming from Miami or kept previous coaching staffs from getting these type of caliber guys? Because I know, Donna, you do a lot of recruiting coverage and you're able to get into these practices and see, and you've said even yourself that like these are big boys. These are SEC type players. What do you think kind of kept players from coming to Miami these like past 2 decades or so?
Well, I think one of the things was, and Rudy touched on this a little bit, a lot of the evaluations from some of the previous coaches were kind of lazy. They would rely,
Yeah.
I think, on the STAR system, on the recruiting services a little bit too much, because a philosophy that they've had during the Mario Cristobal era, and this was something, for Alonzo Highsmith was like technically the GM for a couple of years. He's no longer with the program, but they still look at it the same way. They don't offer recruits that they don't scout in person. Like they never offer somebody strictly based on, hey, 24/7 says this guy's a 4 or a 5-star, or hey, this guy's huddle reel, which is like those 5-minute highlight reels of high
Yeah.
school players, look really good. We better offer this kid. Like they always scout in person. There is a real emphasis on, not only the body types, because I mean any coach can say, hey, we only want like physically the largest players, right?
Right.
Anybody can make that their philosophy. It doesn't necessarily work out, but it's also the personality types.
Yeah.
They want guys who don't shy away from competition, which it's harder to do these days than it was even 7, 8 years ago because
Oh
of the
yeah.
transfer portal now. Because a lot of times, you see it all around the country, right? If a player is third on your depth chart, he's going to bounce into the
Yeah.
transfer portal the next chance he gets. So it's hard, but they find guys who embrace competition. And also, something I think is worth noting about the program. Players don't. They know they can't get away with things behind the scenes. Like if you show
That's a
up
good
late
one.
to meetings,
Yep.
you're gonna get held accountable to that for that. If you don't practice well, you're gonna be held accountable to that for that. They actually do have like an internal disciplinary system that some of the players that have transferred out over the last couple of cycles, that has been a part of that, without naming any
Yeah.
names on that. So they really do create that standard as far as like players really wanting to, because your question was making the choice to want to come to Miami. First of all, on the recruiting trail, Mario Cristobal and his assistants they're relentless.
Yeah. I've heard that.
In this day and age, especially high school players and their families, because the families are a big part of it.
Hmm.
They want to feel the love. They want to feel like they're being made a priority. And if you're not doing that, one of these other staffs that are recruiting these players is going to do that, and that can relationships make just a huge difference. And I think a big part of it over the last couple of years, and this hasn't always been the case since Cristobal's been here. Like he's cycled through some coordinators, because some of the coordinators he's had, Josh Gaddis and then Lance Guidry recently, didn't work out. But I think he's got the right people now. Players want to know, how am I going to be used in this offense or defense when I get here?
Yeah.
And am I going to be coached up properly? And, players who come out to Miami practices, because that's a big part of the recruiting process. I mean, guys, high school players coming out, seeing how you practice. And, if you're a receiver, you see what Malachi Tony, who's now doing it in games, was doing in practice for the past several months. And so it's just it's a very professionally run program right now. And if you
Yeah, I've heard
can
that.
show the evidence in practice and in games, you're going to have more success on the recruiting trail. So I think that's one of those reasons, a number of reasons why high school players, the blue chip guys, are seeing Miami as more of an option than they used to.
Rudy, did you want to add?
Go for it, Chris.
No, so I just always felt that way. Like and I loved that was probably the most like perfect answer I could have possibly asked for, Donald, because realistically, me and Rudy have gone through it ad nauseum, right? Where we're just like, what is keeping players from wanting to come down here? Why would you want to go play in Tuscaloosa when you could play in Coral Gables? Like it never made sense to me. Like I'm sure you've been to these college towns, like not to poo poo on them, but it's like you're only going to play football for 4 months out of the year, but the rest of the year you're in that town. And it's like, I don't know if I want to be in Ann Arbor in January. You know what I mean?
Or
We're not going to be on a
Syracuse, New
beach.
York. I mean, they're trying to take kids
Exactly.
out of our backyard too.
That's wild to me. Like I think he'll flip back anyways, but we won't
What I
name
think is
names. Go ahead.
What I think is super interesting too is like I think just this past week after the Florida State game, you're seeing Mario Cristobal really hitting like the podcast trail, and he's
Mm-hmm.
talking to guys I haven't seen him talk to before. He's on with David
Bussin' with the
Pollack, he's on
boys.
with Bussin' with the boys, he's on
Yeah.
with everybody, and I think you're seeing a different side of Mario Cristobal now that you haven't really seen the first couple of years, where he's alluding a little bit more to what they were experiencing, and also kind of just the term comes up a lot of the cupboard was bare when he came in. And when you look at when you talk about the body types again, and you talk about the depth and you say, okay, we don't have what we need to be competitive right now. I think there's a lot there that affects recruiting too, to say like, you can't really see, it's hard to see what your vision is when you don't have the pieces in place. So when you talk about like the Josh Gaddis offense, the first year, regardless of the personalities and like what the X's and O's were, you're trying to run a big boy offense with like a Mazda Miata.
Yeah.
Instead of having, you can't run the F-250 route with the Mazda Miata.
No.
It's building the team in your vision, and also those players look a certain way. I think my favorite line of hearing Mario Cristobal talk about players that are on the bigger side is when you hear him. It's there in every single guy. Great hips.
Great hips, yeah.
And when you hear that, it's one of those things where, like, if you're a casual fan, you go, "What is he talking about?
Hips don't lie."
Great
exactly.
hips.
Shout out to Shakira.
Figure? Yeah. It goes, no. They're looking at things in a little bit more of a micro way in terms of like how they're going to build. Just look at the guys who've been on the roster for the past few years and how they've changed over time. Mesidor went from being like kind of slim to kind of big to being fit now again in a certain way. And he's just one of those guys. I think something that we saw previously, was like some guys, they were getting size, but they didn't have the speed, and they had to work on trying to develop speed. You can't develop some of it. You have to have some of it on your own. So
kind of born with that.
Like, where they exactly. And when you hear guys like Josh Pate say that these creatures are built in a different lab, they don't really match up with what you're doing. This is the kind of stuff you're talking about in terms of guys of just their size and how explosive they are. When I used to sit back in field club in those really Gucci seats, watching CC Maui Noah jump up on the padded wall that's like 6 foot tall to get in there, this dude moves like a cat.
Oh,
he's 340 pounds, whatever it is, and he moves like a cat. That you can't teach a certain amount of that.
Yeah, you can't learn big. You're just that way. You're either a dinosaur, like Mario's been telling everyone is Jurassic Park at practice every day, or you're what you are. Like me, like your boy's only 5'10". The NBA was not in the cards, okay? I had a Hobbit mother and a Chinese father. It was never in the cards for me, okay? Your boy was never going to play. All right, so we're in year 4, guys. We've seen a ton of incredible talent come through Hecht and play on Green Tree. Who has been your favorite Mario recruit thus far? From year 1 to now, it could be anyone from Malachi Tony to CC Maui Noah. Who's been your favorite recruit so far? I'll leave it open.
Oh, I mean, there's so many to choose from,
Right?
but I'm going to give you, but I want to follow your rules, and I want to give you a name, and I'm going to say CC Maui Noah, who, starting right tackle, he could have gone anywhere in the country. And, he also didn't have like the local ties to Miami. because
True.
I could have thrown out a name like Ruben Bain, but Ruben had so many things pulling him to Miami,
Yeah.
family ties and everything. Obviously, it's still a big get for Mario Cristobal because he had to beat out
100%.
other schools for him. But CC Maui Noah, originally from Samoa, has family in California. He was at IMG Academy in Bradenton. That's a boarding school. Like he had his whole life out on the West Coast, and he decided to come to Miami. And Cristobal and Alex Mirabal had to convince him this is the best spot to develop as an offensive lineman. Not only has CC been absolutely nasty on the field now, in his third year, probably his final year at Miami, because he's going to be a first round draft pick, has
Absolutely.
started has started every single game going back to his first as a true freshman. And I would think I would characterize it as a bit of a sacrifice for him to play right tackle out of, the best need and the best fit for the team because, left tackle is usually the spot that makes you a little bit more money come NFL draft time. And,
That's very
when
fair.
he's a pro, he could probably play either spot. And,
And very
but
good.
I think it's a bit of a sacrifice for him to do the best thing for the team, and that's play right tackle and just dominate at that spot. And to me, and he's also, one of the nicest young men you'll ever meet. The family is great, really tight knit group, and I love how he's embraced the community, and the community has embraced him in turn.
Yeah, I've seen him he's been to our church a few times, and he's a great guy. He's enormous, by the way. Like you really don't
Yeah.
get you don't get an idea till you see them in person because they all look the same size. You're like, oh, okay, whatever. And then you see me like, oh my god, I could literally fit in this guy's shoe. What about you, Rudy? Who's been your favorite recruit thus far that Mario's brought in since day one?
I'm going to take the cheap way out, and it's going to be Ruben
Ruben
Bain, and
Hurricane
it's going to be
Bane.
for all the
Hurricane Bane.
reasons that
Yeah.
Donno explained as to, it was an easier decision for him to come here given the history. But I think if you watch his journey too throughout these years that he's been at Miami, recovering from injury last year, having that really explosive first year as well. I mean, I think if we go back to that 2023 season, the two safeties that should have been that weren't were Ruben Bain pressures for the most part.
Yeah.
His explosiveness, and also just seeing his character come back. When they talk about how this is a new identity of team, but there's always guys that kind of represent what the old feeling was like. Ruben Bain's that throwback guy because he's the
Yeah.
guy that isn't the biggest one on the field, but he's the most explosive that just blows up whoever he lines up across from. And then just watching his socials, all the F bombs, all the FUs that I'm
Yeah,
seeing
I
from him
love
this
it.
season,
I love
I
it.
drink
The
that
notepad, the
in.
psychopath
Yes.
Oh, the
notes,
notepads are the
the
best.
psychopath notes
Yeah.
are my favorite. I'm like, ooh, I love this little craziness.
Right. He's the violent version
Oh, I
of
love it.
Jean-Michel Basquiat. If you think of
You
that,
think
like that
darkness is your
artist,
ally? Like
right?
every
But
time
like
I see him, I'm like, yep.
when you look at that artist's work and you see like his unhinged, notebook scribblings and stuff like that, this is
Yeah.
like getting inside the mind of the killer. And thankfully, he's not a killer. He's not Aaron Hernandez. He's Ruben Hurricane Bain. He
Yeah.
just wants to annihilate you on the field, and he's the nicest guy off of it.
Yeah, you guys took my two picks. So I made sure I had two others ready. Mine would either be Mark Fletcher, just because
Another great one.
you'd want to talk about a guy lost his father, came out, played his lights out last year against FSU. The guy blocks like no one else's business. He can run people over, puts on weight, dedicated to the game, obsessed with the game. So I love that. And then my next one has to be Baby Jesus, right? Guy, what would you call it? He graduates early, right? Readjusts his reclassifies. Thank you, Donno. Reclassifies, shows up, ready to work. And this is what's really important. People really need to know who may not follow Miami. Miami has a lot of slot type receivers. That body type this year, me and Rudy talked about it coming into the season. I was like, I'm a little worried. We have a lot of slot looking guys, not a lot of tall, lanky looking guys. You know what I mean? And so that guy, that kid could have easily gone pretty much anywhere else. I know he had offers at Alabama and other places, and he came here. But when he got here, the blocking. It's not just about the passing. This guy is laying kids out, fighting on plays that he knows he's not going to get the ball. Like I think it was the Gator game where the shoving matches and the throwing matches. If people are watching the ball, I'm watching Malachi Tony. I want to see what these receivers are doing on run plays because that is culture right there. And you're watching like these guys who really believe in Mario's grit and leaving it all out on every play. I think Malachi Tony's a great example of that. So looking more specifically at this year, we have seen probably one of the craziest. I got into it with the viewer at the beginning of the year, who's a Notre Dame fan. He was like, "You guys had 27 players in the transfer portal." I mean, I know they don't talk like that in South Bend, but to me, that's what they sound like. Anyone north of West
They
Palm sounds
talk
like
more
that.
like this, Chris.
Yeah,
They
you're
just
right.
talk like this.
That's
You
true.
don't have enough people. You don't have enough bank accounts to be able to do this. We have the Catholic Church behind us, and there's more money than Jesus, literally, to pay you.
Thanks, Coach. So, with that said, we saw a ton of transfer players come in this year. Who has been your favorite transfer athlete this year besides Carson Beck?
Jacoby Thomas. I mean,
Yes! That was mine
the
as well.
safety transfer from Tennessee. He was, I guess, a little bit under the radar. Like I was talking him up when he transferred because people I know who cover the Vols like told me like they were surprised he left because they thought he was going to start this year.
Yeah.
But still, like there wasn't that much hype because he hadn't been a full-time starter at Tennessee in previous years. He has just been a model student athlete on and off the field. Like I don't even know. Like I don't think I've seen Jacoby Thomas, come up with like a negative play or anything that's looked bad on that. Not that I've analyzed every single snap he's taken, but I
Oh,
can
yeah, but I know
never
what you mean.
remember I can never remember a big play given up where it's like that was on number 8. Like I don't think that's happened all season long. Like he's he's been making plays behind the line of scrimmage. He's been getting sacks, TFLs, big interception in the last game. His PFF grades, his PFF grades have been really, consistently high, and I think he's been consistent. Like there obviously have been other transfers that have stood out. CJ Daniels has been a revelation at receiver. Marty Brown has been really good at running back.
Yep.
Keontae Scott in the defensive backfield has been great, but I don't know if anyone else outside of Carson Beck, of course, has been as consistently good. Maybe not even Carson Beck has been as consistently good as Jacoby Thomas.
What about you, Rudy? Who's been your favorite transfer this year?
I'm cheating. I'm picking 2. And I'm going to be quick
That's fine.
because the first one is CJ Daniels for other reasons outside of spectacular circus catches. To me, it's the attitude again. It's that Ruben Bain FU mentality when it comes to just hearing. It's been this long, and we never heard somebody sing Florida State's fight song back to them. So
Yeah.
The
I'm going to give
trolling
it
was chef's kiss.
right, and it's
And
one of those
I don't
things
think Mario's going to let him do that again. So we enjoyed the time it happened.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen again.
The
Probably
thing
not.
about it that I enjoy is that it's so creative in the sense of the only people that are knowing are the ones watching on TV. So the refs can't flag you for it. The other
Right.
team can't use it as bulletin board material. The crowd doesn't even really know what you're doing because they can't hear you in that environment doing it. So that's why I thought it was genius. And then the second one, my second choice from best transfer has to be Xavier Lucas. And I say that not so much because of, yes, he's a fantastic addition to the secondary, but it's more of like a sleeper cell idea of like what we learned from him just physically stepping on campus in Coral Gables is enough to know and peel back a little bit of that underbelly of what's going on in other conferences and saying, oh, they're trying to hold kids to 2-year, agreements over in these other schools. I don't know if that's legitimate. We don't know if that's ethically possible and legally possible. And for us, that's something that you can use as ammunition in your recruiting too, to say, do you want to be somewhere where they treat you like that? Do you want to be in a conference where they're trying to make that standard across the board? Oh, well, the SEC and the Big Ten. Okay, well, that's how one conference is doing things. We could argue that maybe the SEC is going to try to do the exact same thing. Come to Miami. We're going to treat you a lot better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had the same one as you, Alex, for all the reasons that you mentioned. But one more thing I would add is I love his grit and his attitude. He is old school in the sense it's now old school. I know this sounds sucks, but like he reminds me of a Sean Taylor, Ed Reed and his attitude. The guy is hit stick every day. I mean, from the first game, I saw this kid and I was like, Jacoby Thomas is legit. This guy loves hitting people and he's got that confidence and got that swagger. I know he does the Ray Lewis dance, little jig, but he gives me very much Sean Taylor vibes, very much Ed Reed vibes in terms of just wanting to lay people out and play with that tenacity. So I love that. Moving on to our leader, our fearless leader. I want to talk, it's a little controversial. I want to talk about Mario as a game day coach. We kind of saw it with FSU this past weekend. Great 3 quarters, got to the 4th quarter. Everyone's kind of just been pointing it out. It was a little bit of I know you don't believe in the conservative talk, Alex, but I want to know, do you think that Mario was being conservative in that fourth quarter? Or what do you think was the shift in the FSU game that we've seen not only in the FSU game, but we've seen it in the Florida game and we've seen it in the Notre Dame game?
I think being conservative was part of it. It was. It wasn't the whole story. Like there's like a pie chart, and that was one piece of the pie.
Right.
And I do think they go conservative by design in these situations, especially like when you're up 25 points in the fourth quarter. I think that Mario and not every fan has to like this, but I think there were other reasons why the conservative thing, I'm not going to say it backfired because I never felt like Miami was going to lose the game, but
Yeah,
why
no,
the game
in any
got
of them.
so much closer than it had to be. They're trying to shorten the game. They're trying to give fewer possessions to the other team. Because if you throw like some fans are saying like jump on the throat. If you throw the passes, the game is over. But if the passes go incomplete, then
Yep.
you're not
That's 3
forcing your
minutes.
opponent to use, yeah, right. And you're not forcing your opponent to use timeouts, which is something people forget. I have to
Yep.
be reminded of that sometimes that, not
Absolutely.
only does the clock keep moving when you run the ball, but you're forcing teams to use their timeouts in that sense. So part of it is that I do think they go conservative by design. It's going to drive some fans crazy. I hope it doesn't cost them a game. In this case, though, in the Florida State thing, I mean, that if Miami doesn't have, I think it was 3 personal fouls on defense and special teams that
Yeah.
gave 45 free yards to Florida State. Also offensively, Miami had a holding. So you're talking about like at
Yeah, that
least
Lofton hold.
55 yards. Yeah, in that one quarter, you gave 55 free yards to Florida State. And, they went for like 3 fourth downs in the fourth quarter and they converted all of them. So some of that is execution. So I think there was like a pie chart. A lot of it had to do with a lack of discipline. I do think that Miami, not just with the play calling, but also with the effort. I think when they were up 28-3, they're kind of like, all right, let's just get out of here. And they weren't playing. So I think
Yeah, I
Mario could
agree.
use that as a teachable moment to finish games with your effort. So with the conservative thing, yeah, because you mentioned like it's not people had the criticism after, the Notre Dame game, similar thing. Florida, I don't know, because Miami then got really effective in the fourth quarter again. It was the third
Yeah.
quarter that was the lull in the Florida game. But I think their worst nightmare is what happened against Syracuse last year,
Oof.
where
All of
they
ours.
weren't playing complementary football. So obviously the defense couldn't stop anybody against Syracuse, but then the offense, 3 and outs, turnovers on passing plays, and they didn't shorten the game offensively. So maybe there's an overcorrection because of that. But I think that game taught them something and maybe traumatized the staff a little bit that, hey,
Yeah.
if we need to lean on our running game, whether it works or not, at least we're eating clock and we're not throwing interceptions or fumbling or incompleting passes, which is kind of your worst nightmare in those spots. So I hope that moving forward, Miami just gets sharper from an execution standpoint on down in finishing these games and not, giving me heart palpitations in the fourth quarter.
You got to have those cardiac canes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll touch on a little bit of history too. I mean, when we talk about those glory days that we were younger and experiencing when we first got to campus and when we were in high school, those games could have been even more of a blowout if Miami didn't take out its first string and its second string.
That's
A
true.
lot of those games we were up big, and you decided to just run conservative, kill the clock, give some extra playing time to your backups. Miami didn't play its backups in the second half against Florida State, but it definitely, grinded to a halt and got a little bit more conservative on that side. For me, I think more the thing that was frustrating watching that game was the change in defensive philosophy a little bit. Like it's one of those things where
That's
I understand playing
yes.
safe.
Yeah.
I understand
Prevent.
playing safe.
That was yep.
And I understand like you don't want to be beaten with a big play. But all I can think of is Corey Heatherman in this defense drafted this masterclass, which I was a little premature. I will admit I was texting Donno on that first Florida State drive. And I'm like, did we overthink this too much? Did we over prepare and just over scheme a little bit? And it looked like a couple of adjustments just on how they were blitzing that safety to keep, containment on Tommy Castellanos there is really what was the tweak that was needed to show what the other, three
Yep.
quarters were like. Going from that to then running a prevent to me is I
Yeah.
thought was the
Yeah.
bigger problem than the offense, because you're gonna, and also your special teams kind of let you down a little bit because it was that punt that ended up at like the 50-yard line
Oh
or something
yeah,
like
Forgot
that.
about that
So
one. There was a shank too.
Shankopotamus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
that was
So there's a
brutal.
few things there that's like your complimentary football goes from both ends. And like, as fantastic as that defense was, yes, the substitutions are going to hurt you and they're running up tempo, and those 20, 18, 17 play drives, they needed those to score. That took time off the clock. So they were shooting themselves while doing it because they know they couldn't score quickly. But at the same time, your defense had been lights out. I don't think they were tired. I think they got tired running prevent and running in those different drives, then having the offensive possessions be so short because of, going for it on fourth down, all that. So I feel
Well,
like there might have been a way to where you could stay aggressive defensively that might have
yeah,
kept that game a little bit safer. But at the
Yeah.
same time, a win is a win. And I think if we go back to it, like,
agreed.
this is Mario Cristobal ball from 2006 when he was an assistant, where you're watching them just slow down a little bit in the second half. Let's talk about the Rose Bowl for like 10 seconds. Everyone talks about how, TCU got annihilated by Georgia in the national championship game. Cool. Miami could have probably hung 70 on Nebraska because it was
Yes.
34-0 at the
Oh
half.
yeah,
You didn't see anybody in there in the second half. So that
Yeah.
37-14 was all garbage time. And the whole time we're watching this game last week, this is a garbage touchdown. This is a garbage touchdown.
Oh, they all were. There, like Donna was saying, there wasn't a second where I was concerned. And actually, in all three games, I would say in the Notre Dame game and the Florida game, all three of those games, there wasn't a nanosecond where I was like, oh, we're going to lose this game, or there's a potential where the PTSD was kicking in from last year. But as we're talking about the FSU game, I'm actually starting to wonder now. Well, first, I would also note that, like, with these gadget plays that Gus Malzahn loves to run, I was saying on the recap, I was like, you start shutting down avenues, and then you can only run through so many streets, right? With these plays, and the defense will pick up on that. They're going to pick up on your behaviors and your footwork, and they're going to see where things are going because you watch the feet, and the feet don't lie. You know what I mean? In football, so it's like, you can do these little trick gadget plays, but you can do it for maybe 2 quarters. And then after that, sorry, especially when you give us that 20 minutes in halftime, we're going to figure that stuff out really quick, especially someone like Corey Heatherman. But also, as we're talking about this, I'm now even wondering, again, maybe Mario is playing 4D chess, and he is reserving his players and making sure he doesn't overexhaust them because he knows this team can make a deep run, and maybe it's about load management for this team. But I know we're a little critical of Mario right now, but I want to jump into a little positivity about Mario because I think he's doing something special. And I noted this week, and I want to get your guys' perspective on this. So it's been said that the dynasty traditions we saw at Alabama and briefly visited by Georgia are dead and gone because of NIL and the transfer portal. I've been saying the last couple of weeks that UM has a very unique opportunity to develop its own dynasty in this transfer portal era if Mario can release control of the game and give his coordinators full autonomy, right? Because I kind of feel like, and it's been said that, and everyone asks, like, do you feel like Mario is causing or giving the final word in why there's this relent or this conservative nature, right? So I think because you have such a great recruiter and program manager in Mario, followed up with two brilliant minds in their respective sides of the ball, I think you could possibly get a real dynasty here in the fact that you can have Mario bringing in the guys. You could have Corey and Shannon developing the guys on each side of the ball. What do you guys think? Do you think that that Miami has the opportunity right here to build a dynasty in this era?
It's hard. I think for every reason you stated, I think the opportunity is there, because recruits are always going to see Miami as a destination. Transfer portal players, especially now quarterbacks, seeing Cam Ward, what he did last year, what Carson Beck is doing this year, who's got himself, right now on top of the Heisman Trophy betting odds, which is pretty remarkable because everyone was just like talking
Yeah,
about how
poo-pooing.
terrible Carson Beck was last offseason, just kicking the guy while he was down, and look at him now. I think it's a sensational story. And so, yeah, the opportunity is there. I mean, it's going to be, and you talk about like the former dynasties of Alabama and Georgia. I think it is shifting a little bit because I don't see Ohio State going away, for example. I don't. It's funny because even though Alabama just beat Georgia, they seem to have their number. I still feel like Georgia is one to contend with. Texas was like on their way. This whole arch
Oof.
thing has been a disaster so far.
Yeah.
I honestly, I feel like if they would play their backup Caldwell, they would
They would do
probably
better.
have a better chance. They would be better, but just
Yeah.
the whole
It's a
the
political
arch
thing.
thing, like there's so much baggage that comes with that. But I
Yeah.
still, I think Sark has done a great job rebuilding that program. So I think there's a handful of programs, but Miami is one of them. Like Miami is in this conversation now with an opportunity to like be in that dynasty conversation. So I mean, for everything that comes with, you know, the recruiting, the coaching, the development. Gosh, I hope both of these coordinators stay for a really
Can we
long
keep
time. I
them?
know,
Do you
I
think we
mean,
can
I
keep
know,
them?
I know Shannon Dawson's going to be really sought after.
Yeah.
I think he would only leave, I think, for certain. And I can't speak for him, obviously, but you know, I don't think he's taking another coordinator job at another
No,
college. So
I don't think so either.
it would have to either be like a coordinator job in the NFL or a head coaching job somewhere in college. I think those are the only things that would pull him away. I think Heatherman would be here for probably at least a couple few years since he's just in his first year at Miami. So, and Jason Taylor, I know he's not a coordinator, but I want that dude as
Oh,
long as possible developing
yes.
Miami's defensive end. So, I think I'm not going to get too crazy with dynasty talk yet, but I think Miami can put themselves into that conversation.
Yeah, I'll say the theme here, I think, is what's old is new again. I think if you
Yes.
look at Miami's initial run and its initial dynasty had that Dolphins connection with guys like Howard Schnellenberger coming in and having Earl Morrall as your quarterback's coach. So having a former Dolphin legend on your staff now helps. I think, yes, if you look at the way things have changed in college football, like this has allowed Miami to kind of come up as quickly as it has under Mario Cristobal. Yes, there isn't as much depth to where you may struggle to find a dynasty truly in the Alabama definition of winning multiple consecutive national championships under Nick Saban. I think if you not reclassify like Malachi Tony, but like maybe redefine what you think dynasty is in this case, if I would call Miami a dynasty if they're in the college football playoff in the semifinals every single year for like a 5, 6, 7, 8 year run. I think all of us would be very happy if there's a couple of
Oh,
national titles
absolutely.
and a run of always being in that conversation. And I think the things that would prevent Miami from doing that are less than there are options for like a more favorable opportunity for Miami to do that. Because as of right now, the way things stand here on October 8th, 2025, Miami is owning recruiting again in the state of Florida and its hotbed.
And that's what
That's one.
and here's the thing. I use dynasty very loosely. I guess I would say an elite program or
Yeah.
top-notch program, just because, like I said, God forbid when Phil Knight dies, I don't know what Nike's going to do. It would be hard for me to like really believe that they're going to be giving the same amount of money to Oregon like they have with Phil still alive and there. Because again, like Phil, there's an emotional tie. There's a heartstring tie to Oregon. You know what I mean? So that's why he's giving so much. And then you look at like things with Nick Saban out of Alabama. Who can they recruit? You know, and then Kalen DeBoer obviously not doing as much as Nick Saban. So we're seeing again the parity, but I think in this era, and we've seen it the last 2 or 3 seasons, specifically the last two, but even since since Mario's first year, that you not only need to recruit in the high school level, but you gotta fill in with the transfer portal. And Mario, I mean, if this year isn't like again the greatest example, a case study, masterclass in building a team, I don't know what else is, because I mean you're talking about a program that now had one of the worst defenses and the worst defenses in the program's history to now having one of the greatest defenses in the nation right now. I'm just saying, like, this is a trend that is kind of catching steam and building, that I'm like, ooh, we could have a elite program, maybe not a dynasty, an elite program on our hands, you know?
Yeah, it's a style of ball that kind of stands the test of time. There are
Mhm.
things here that are different. Obviously, there's a lot more of shotgun and pistol that you didn't see back then. You're seeing Miami run I formation. You're seeing Miami run, 4 tight ends, 2 running backs. Like when was the last time you saw a split backfield?
Yeah.
Looking
And
back
by
at
the
like
way,
this.
whenever they put that personnel package on the field, it's usually when they need a yard, 2 yards. You know they're getting it every
Oh yeah.
single
Every
time.
single
When
time. Put money on
when
it.
SJ Tuli is on the field as an extra blocker, you know a first down is coming.
I
Oh,
can
and I'm
see
surprised they
like
don't
a
hand him the
little.
ball off at this point. Like,
I've been
I
waiting for that. I would
yeah,
love to
like
see
I'm
him
like
get that
just give
opportunity.
him the ball and just let him fall forward.
I could see like a little smile on the truth teller's face every time you see split backs in the backfield. I'm sure he
Yeah.
just goes nuts for that. We were talking about dynasties. Look, man, I know Phil Knight has this thing, but I've got Oregon's trophy case right here. So, let's not put them in the dynasty discussion. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
fantastic. They do a lot of stuff. They have to win
Well,
one.
and they've
Right.
made themselves. They've been relevant. They've been relevant every year, and obviously they were that for a little bit with Chip Kelly. They got away from that. Mario helped
Or
them
brought
get
him
back
back.
to
Yep.
that. Dan Lanning is continuing that tradition. So, like, I mean, obviously that there's worse programs to be right now than
Oh,
Oregon, but
100%.
they
Oh, I
haven't
would definitely
gotten
be
over
Oregon.
that hump yet.
Yeah.
The viewers hate when I say this, but I call them the UM of the West Coast. I'm like, they're the Canes of the West Coast. They want to have that, and it's realistically what they are. But it's neither
That
here nor
was
there.
SC. That used to be USC for a long time. I think we
Oh
always used
yeah,
to call them the Miami
absolutely.
of the West
Yeah,
because
and
they
it's funny
had
because like when I was growing up and like in high school and college, like I always had respect for USC because I
Mhm.
kind of felt like they were the West Coast Miami. So it's like
Yeah.
I never hated on them. Like when I went to the national championship game in '04 or '05 when they beat Oklahoma's brains in at Hard Rock Stadium, and I
Yep.
was
I remember that.
rooting for SC. Like I had no love for Oklahoma. It's pretty cool. They're
Yeah.
destroying these guys.
No, and you like to watch
did you
greatness,
wear
right?
did you
Yeah.
wear your OJ Simpson throwback to that game?
I'm sure I did, but it wasn't. I know it was. It was a junior sale. I never had an OJ. I never
That's
had an
right.
OJ. It was
That's
a
right.
junior sale.
That's right.
I
So
100%. I wore the junior sale because it was actually a USC fan who sold me and Hose B. I went to the game with. Sold us their extra 2 tickets. So it's like,
So you have
I,
to
I
honor it.
gotta,
Yeah,
I gotta show up in the USC jersey. I didn't really have a
absolutely.
dog in the fight, but I was happy to see USC win.
yeah, Chris, I omitted this from the intro for Dono, but he had the most extensive throwback collection before throwbacks were truly a thing. Like
Oh
Yeah.
he had
man.
a Gus Frerotte game-worn Miami Dolphins jersey.
Yeah, well, that wasn't
Okay,
even a
this is how
throwback. That was just a
obscure.
bad investment, was what that was. I mean,
Listen,
yeah.
I'm not trying to hark on either of you guys, but I don't know how either of you cheer for the Dolphins. I don't. I just the Canes give me enough palpitations and heartache. I can't even imagine you
But by the
guys
way, I
are
want to say
stronger individuals
something
than me.
about the Dolphins because I have so much respect for my 7-year-old son Luca because we watch he's really into football and we watch the Dolphins every single week, which
That's
means
great, man.
he's every Sunday he's depressed. And so
What?
we were watching their game, where they just blew a big lead against who the hell was I
Carolina
lose track of.
Carolina.
Yeah, against Carolina. We were watching the game against Carolina, and like, my son's so upset that my wife is like, you don't have to be a Dolphins fan, and he looks at her, he's like, what are you talking about? We're Dolphins fans. Is it? And I was like, at the very same moment,
Proud of you, son.
I pitied him, but I was also proud of him because it's like,
Absolutely.
Mom just gave you an out. Like she's telling you, like, if this team makes you miserable, you don't have to root for this
Yeah.
team. And in his mind, it's like it's not an option. Like it's in his DNA. And I'm like,
No.
I'm proud of him. I also feel terrible for him at the
You're
same
doing a
time.
great job, Dad. You're doing a phenomenal job. I just got my son Malachi into football this year. It's lucky. Like he sings the college game day song every day, every
Oh,
day.
awesome.
And when game day comes on, we're vibing. But it's a good time to be a Canes fan for him. And it's funny.
Yeah, for
See
sure.
FSU, every time we see FSU, he goes, Dad, Dad. I'm like, yeah. He's like, those are the bad guys, right? I'm like, yes, son. They're the bad guys.
That's
Always
good
know.
parenting, right there.
Always know that FSU are the bad guys, and you will be disowned if you go there. Back to the game, though. There were a ton of questions about the squad coming into the season. The offense losing its crown jewel in Cam Ward and all its weapons. The defense basically getting gutted and axed and bringing in all new players and coaches. What do you guys think was the bigger surprise, the offense or the defense blowing up this year, and why?
I'll let Rudy go first on this one.
Okay. For me, it's go. This is tough because
It is.
because I
That's
feel
why I
like
wanted you to go first.
yeah, this is so tough. Like which side? You know what? I'm gonna even
And
though
I
it
sent you the
feels like
questions,
it's
Rudy, so
easier.
you should have an answer
Yeah,
prepared. I sent you these earlier.
I know it's the easier answer to say the defense, but I'll give a different reason as to why. I mean, like, yes, you think installing new players, yeah, it should be a little bit better. You've upgraded your talent, you're playing your
Mm-hmm.
physicality. I think it's the idea that this change happened so quickly. I think when you think of a new coach coming in and some new players, it's not so much the cohesion between them and the communication. I mean, their communication has been night and day different. But when we talk about like when you hear a coach talk about concepts and how we're going to simplify things and we're going to attack and we're going to swarm to the ball, those feel like cultural things that take a long time to build.
Yeah.
And yes, Miami as a brand, as an institution, is known for doing that. This is the first time I've seen a truly Miami feel defense in a very long time. And I know that like previous coaching staffs have said things about bringing back, harkening back to the older days, Manny Diaz having the 86 gang style defense and stuff, like wanting to give credence to those guys, giving paying homage to those guys. But this is really the first time that you've seen from the ground up, from a physical perspective. Yeah, the defensive ends have never been this elite. I think before at Miami, it's always been defensive
Yeah.
tackles that Miami was
Right.
really known for. But like,
Right.
you're talking about swarming defensive backs. You're talking about, oh, there's my first
Violence.
little thumbs up there. This is the first time that I've really seen this from a Miami team in a very, very, very long time. And that's why I'll
Mhm.
say that's the bigger shock, because I think I expected this maybe towards the end of the year, maybe by next season. I didn't expect this so quickly out of the gate.
Yeah.
Rudy's right, but I'll give my flowers to the offense to give the other perspective, because I think about a lot of the national narratives coming into the season. Hey, Miami lost their top 5 pass catchers.
Yep.
Who are they really? Can you really replace Restrepo? And by the way, I love Restrepo. I'm not taking a shot. He's one of my favorite
No.
Canes of all time. But like, how do you replace that guy? How
Mhm.
do you replace Cam Ward? And obviously Carson Beck does it in a completely different way. But I think people were just expecting the wide receiver room to be a liability this year because of all the production that they lost. I've said this a couple times this week on Locked On Canes. I would argue that Malachi Toney and CJ Daniels have been better than any 2 receivers on
I
the
agree.
roster last year. That's how
Mhm.
good they've been this season. And that's a testament to Kevin Beard, the wide receivers coach, Cristobal and his staff recruiting and in the portal, because those guys are both, new to the team.
Yeah.
One's a 6-year transfer and the other one is a true freshman. And Carson Beck. I mean, we talked about it earlier. For reasons I still don't fully understand, people were so down on him. I mean, I think the fair reason that people had to be a little skeptical was coming off the surgery, but people were throwing in all this stuff about, oh, he's not a good teammate and he doesn't care about football. And
Yeah.
like they added all this other that just has been completely
Nonsense.
fictional. Like it's
Yeah.
been complete not like he works as hard, if not harder, than anyone else on that team. And he's been a great teammate and his teammates respect him. So to see him having the success that he's having, which is, again, it shouldn't be that surprising to people because 2 years ago or less than 2 years ago, he was considered the top quarterback in college football. He's found his form and a change of scenery has helped him do that. And, obviously there's other stuff about Miami's offense that isn't surprising. Nobody should be surprised about the offensive line play. Nobody should be surprised about the running game success and all that stuff. But I think passing game, receivers, and quarterback has surprised a lot of people, and they're running out of reasons to slander Carson Beck. The haters are completely out of ammunition.
Yeah. I would agree, but for both reasons, you both gave the exact responses I would have given for either side. I think both are incredible stories. I think it's just incredible what Miami's doing. So what is your crystal ball for the rest of the season? Undefeated, ACC champs, national champs? What do you guys think? Where are we going?
I'll go first on this one. I
And don't forget,
will
Donna,
not.
no, this is, we only got 167 viewers. Okay. You can get crazy. Be as outlandish as you
Yeah.
want to be.
Well, I don't take any ACC game for granted. I mean, as a Miami fan who has followed their entire 21st, 22nd season in the ACC, I've followed this entire journey. I do not take any ACC game for granted. These wins can be harder than people think near the end of the season, but I have no reason to believe this team isn't going to run the table when it comes to 12-0 regular season. I believe that their most difficult games are behind them now in the rear view. So it's going to be a matter of keeping that focus that Mario Cristobal talks about, taking every week, go 1-0, take it 1 week at a time, treat every opponent like it's a national championship game, respect every opponent, do not take a single snap for granted. I believe this team can and should run the table. And I also believe that an ACC championship is more attainable than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you look at the most talented teams in the conference outside of Miami. It's hard to explain why Clemson has been so bad. They
Oof,
beat
yeah.
North Carolina, but everyone beats North Carolina.
Literally.
And they're two conference losses. Clemson's probably not going to make it to the ACC championship game. It would
Oh
take a
no.
miracle. Same
Yeah.
thing now with Florida State. They're 2 conference losses in. So you're talking about probably seeing
Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech, possibly. I would love
Yeah.
that opportunity
That'd
for
be
a little
great.
revenge after the
That would
last
be
couple of years.
absolute cinema for
Yeah.
Mario to get his revenge, get his first ACC championship against a team that's been a thorn in his side. God, that would be
Yeah.
incredible.
But it's like, if it's not Georgia Tech, Duke is 3-0 in the conference right now. For the sake of the ACC, I hope Duke doesn't get there, because they look so bad out of conference that I think them getting to the conference championship game will be kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
Quite frankly. Virginia is another one, and Virginia, it's a crazy thing because we all saw them lose to NC State, but that was a non-conference
Non-conference
game against
game.
the
Yep.
conference opponent. So it didn't count. They're 3-0 in the ACC, and Virginia seems to play a little bit better every week. That's a possibility. I mean, Louisville's got 1 conference loss. SMU is still in the conversation. Miami plays them head to head, but it's like any of these teams that you might match up with in the ACC championship game, you have no reason not to beat, because the next 2 most talented teams in the conference are Florida State and Clemson. Probably neither of them have a chance to get to the ACC title game. So you should be able to win the conference. I make no guarantees for what could happen in the playoffs, because again, like if you go up against, an Ohio State or an Oregon, I think we'd all love that. The Oregon storylines would be great, or a Georgia, or maybe even an Alabama. They'll probably get into the playoff. They seem to do that all the time. Well, not last year, I guess. But I don't make any guarantees for the playoff. But I think Miami can compete for a national championship. I'm not necessarily going to pick them to win one, but if there ever was a time to win the ACC, that time is this year.
Amen. I agree.
Yeah. I think what I'll go into there too is there's a term that Donno and I have been using for a long time that I've included in US starting last year about the ACC. It's the circle of suck. Every year, it's the circle of suck. Everybody beats everybody. What I will say is this is the first time that Miami has been in this conference looking this way, where they've been so focused and that their talent level is just so above and beyond. I mean, look, we played for an ACC championship the very first year in 2004. There wasn't a championship game yet, but that game against Virginia Tech that we lost in the Orange Bowl was the de facto ACC championship game. Yep. The winner of that game was going to be the conference champion. We were that close. And that was even with those couple of losses where we had to, North Carolina that first year and that overtime loss to Clemson. And that was the beginning of the slide for Miami. So talent-wise, focus-wise, we weren't there at this time. We're not where we are right now. And the way we see this team perform week in and week out, there is nobody that Miami lines up across that they're not better than from top to bottom and prepared for. Top to bottom, where it feels almost scheme proof now that you've watched Miami just really throttle USF and throttle Florida State. I mentioned the circle of suck because I think this year, all the experts, I'm not including Donno in this, I'm talking about the guys who are on national television, all think, oh, well, this could have been a really great year for the ACC in terms of the number of teams that would be there. Everyone was high on Clemson. Obviously, they were high on Miami, a little suspect, but they were high on North Carolina of all teams this year. They were high on Florida State after the win against Alabama. So they thought, oh, ACC's got maybe 4 or 5 teams. It looks as top heavy as it ever has in terms of it's Miami right now and it's everybody else. And over the past 20-something years, it was Clemson and everybody else, Florida State and everybody else. So I think this year, I want to, knock on every piece of wood in this apartment and say that Miami runs through the ACC schedule this year. I think those cold weather tests that they talk about at the end of the year, look, Blacksburg is not a place you want to play in November, but at the same time, if it's this Virginia Tech team, you're very happy with.
They're brutal.
Yeah.
And the style of football that Miami plays is a weatherproof one as well. We talk about how, Carson Beck struggles to throw a wet football. He didn't have to throw a wet football. They rushed for a couple 100 yards because those trenches mean everything in that weather too. So Miami plays weatherproof ball. Once we get into the college football playoff, at that point, it's a matter of just health. I think if you have a healthy Miami against anybody else, they line up and they They're Miami's favorite in a lot of categories. I'll take Josh Pate at face value when he says he was on the sideline in Ohio State against Texas. He was on the sideline for Alabama. He's watched all these teams, and that Miami looks bigger, faster, and more physical. So as long as they stay healthy and they stay on, stay focused on that end, this is Miami's year to do this. Nobody looks better than them right now.
Listen, guys, I am not just drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm not even putting it in water. I am crushing it up, putting it on a line, and snorting that bad boy up. We are going undefeated, national champs. Book your tickets. We're going all the way. Donno, I really appreciate you being here. I want to respect your time, but I couldn't finish this without a quick lightning round set of questions. So here we go. Are you ready? Quick lightning round questions.
Ready.
Just need your quickest things you got. Biggest argument this year, 2019 LSU versus 2001 Miami. Who wins?
Oh, 2001 Miami. I mean,
Right,
loaded with Hall of Famers. I mean, Sean Taylor would probably score more touchdowns on defense than LSU's offense would score in that matchup.
Absolutely. Next, who would you have rather extended their coaching tenure, Jimmy or Butch? So Jimmy not going to the NFL and neither Butch. They both would have stayed. Which one would you rather have had stayed?
I'm going to say Jimmy because his attitude and his embodiment of, I mean, people still, the impressions that people nationally, and it's either the stuff you love about Miami or the stuff you hate about Miami. Most of that came from the Jimmy Johnson era. So I feel like even though Howard Schnellenberger was the one who created that dynasty, Jimmy to me is the face of it.
I love it. Okay. We're both old school guys. Orange Bowl or Hard Rock? Both
Bowl.
thumping. Thank you. Oh God, I love
Orange
you,
Bowl.
Donno.
Listen, I'm sure some renovations probably were in order because the would have collapsed by now, probably.
Yeah, the erector set would have definitely collapsed by now.
Had they done some renovations, the Orange Bowl would be the spot.
It would have been sacred ground. Okay, Nike or Adidas? What are you more of a guy of? Do you like the Nike's unis or you like the Adidas unis?
My answer is very simple. People hate this, but whoever pays more. And Adidas pays more to Miami than Nike ever did or is willing to now. So give me Adidas. I'm not a big fashion guy, as you could probably tell. I have 2 of these shirts in my closet. Like I'm like Superman. I have multiple. Give me Adidas.
Let's go. And then lastly, hey, we got a couple of gabagool goons in this room right here. We're all Italian, okay? We got some paisanos. Are you more of a Carbone guy or a Luca Osteria? Do you know both of those restaurants, by the way?
Luca Osteria is the only one I've eaten out of those 2, so I have to go with that by default. And I've been there multiple times. The pasta, it's freaking delicious.
Oh, especially the potatoes with the egg. Oh my God, you got to get that with the truffle. It's phenomenal.
That's the must-do appetizer at Luca.
Fire. I mean, anything you get there is
Luca, so I'll go with that.
There you go. There we go. Listen, Donno, it has been beyond a pleasure. Listen, we close every show out by throwing up the U. So we always say, this is the end of the show, guys. We have made it through another episode. Be good, y'all. Win the weekend. And as always, go Canes.
Let's go, baby. No comments about the uniforms this year. They look beautiful.
I love it.